All right, so after you've went and looked at properties, now it's time to put in an offer. This is the offer that is standard across realtors in Florida. Everybody fills out this same contract or one very similar to it when they're going to purchase a property. So I'm going to dive into this with you and go by it, give you a high level overview. And then in subsequent following videos, I'm going to dive into specific things like inspection. We're going to get super in depth. We're going to get super in depth in appraisal, but this is just the general going over it. The first thing I want to say about this document here is they're fillables, right? So, like me as a realtor, I have access to come in here and fill this out. The fillable pieces are the most important pieces to pay attention to because those are like the variable things that we have options to change and not change. There's a lot of things in here. Let's see how many pages this is. So it is 13 pages. So we're going to be going through 13 pages. So starting off here, you put in the seller's name. I put in my name just for sake of this video. And then you put in the buyer's name here, the address. And then we have the property legal description, tax ID, where it's located. Other personal property items included in this purchase. So what's already included is stated right here. Range, oven, refrigerators, dishwasher, etc. You can read this if you want. The following items excluded in this purchase. I always say seller's personal property, or if it's rented out, tenant's personal property, because we don't want them leaving a bunch of items at the property because then you have to hire a junk removal service to go take it out. It's just an extra expense we don't want to deal with. This is the amount we want to offer. This is the escrow money. Now, escrow money, the more escrow money you put down, the stronger your offer is because the seller says, okay, they're going to put down $100K in escrow money. They're super serious about closing this property. On average, I would say it's about 2 to 3% of the purchase price is put down for escrow money in the Miami area here. And that's always to be made within 3 days of an accepted offer. So let's say we submit this over to the sellers, they accept our offer. We then have 3 days to wire the escrow money to the title company, which is right here. So I'll reach out to them, get title, get wire instructions from them. I'll send them to you, and then you're going to wire the escrow money here. Now, if this is, you can also do an additional deposit. Like let's say after inspection clears, inspection's good, and you want to show that you're even more ambitious to get this property, you can say, oh, hey, I'm going to put down a second deposit of $15,000. And that just strengthens your offer. I don't see people typically doing that. But again, it does strengthen your offer. If you have a financing contingency, how much is going to be financed goes right here. And then this is the balance. So you take this number, subtract this number, and this is the amount that you're going to have to bring to closing. That's not including closing costs. This is just for down payment. But yeah, so not all transactions have financing. Some are cash. This is an important line 45 here. This is important. So when we send an offer to somebody, we always try, my theory is I always try to lock them in quickly. I like to move things along quickly while emotions are high, right? So I probably wrote this offer on July 11th, and I always give them till the next day, even if it's a weekend, at 7 p.m. to give us an answer to our offer. If they give us an answer during this time period, we have a bound offer. We are under contract. If they don't answer by this time and they send it to us, let's say on July 12th at 8 p.m., they didn't get us the offer back within binding acceptance. So then we, as the buyers, would have to go and sign off on this offer. But if they get it to us within this time frame, we are bound under contract. Closing date, important here. Closing date is when you take ownership of the property. You get the keys, you wire the final money, and it's yours. So this is the date. It typically takes 30 days minimum to close a property that has financing on it. If it's cash, you can close it in 15 to 20 days. Now, if there is if the property is rented out, we have to check this. Check if property is subject to lease or occupancy after closing. In this particular case, it wasn't, so we didn't check it. Assignability. So what assignability means is if the buyer, like if we get this property under contract, you could technically assign this contract to another party and they could purchase the property. In the world of wholesalers right now, this does happen sometimes. A lot of sellers don't allow us to have an assignable contract, so then we have to put may not assign this contract. But if it was allowable, I could technically give my contract to somebody else. They would assume responsibility of the contract and they would move forward and purchase the property. So this buyer may assign and thereby be released from further liability under this contract. So that means if they assign it, they are no longer liable for anything. And then the second one is may assign but not be released from liability under this contract. So let's say somebody assigns it, like you sign the contract to somebody or we assign it to somebody and they don't close, you are still held liable for the responsibilities of this contract, which means you could get sued. They could do all sorts of stuff. But yeah, a lot of the times they don't allow assignable contracts. Financing. So this is a cash transaction. Wasn't the case. Majority of the transactions are finance. So this contract is contingent upon, if left blank, 30 days. So I always leave it blank. 30 days we have to get loan approval. And then we just mark the financing type here, conventional FHA or VA or other. And then fixed or adjustable loan. So I mark fixed because that's typically what's going on. Sometimes with commercial, you get an adjustable rate. Now, this always has questions right here. At an interest rate not to exceed. So this, by me putting 9% in here, if the interest rate is above 9%, we have the opportunity to back out of the contract. This does not mean that your interest rate is going to be 9%. It's a protection for you stating if the interest rate is above 9%, we can back out of the offer. So, and this is the term. So if left blank, then 30 years. Typically, we'll do a 30-year mortgage. Buyer shall make application for financing within 5 days. That's typically not an issue because you've already been pre-approved. We don't typically see assumptions of existing mortgages, but you can. All right, closing costs, title insurance, survey, home warranty, special assessments. Here are the costs to be paid by the seller, and here are the costs to be paid by the buyer. Title, evidence, and insurance. So this is stating title insurance commitment must be issued 5 days prior to closing date. So we're not going to purchase a property that doesn't have clear title. We always want clear title, and that's automatically written into the contract here. So you're protected. So you can either say seller shall designate closing agent and pay for owner's policy and charges, and buyer shall pay a premium for buyer's lender policy and charges. You could do buyer shall designate closing agent and pay for owner's policy and charges, or you can do the Miami-Dade Broward provision, which is the best to do if you're the buyer. Buyer shall designate closing agent. Seller shall furnish a copy of a prior owner's policy of title insurance or other evidence of title and pay fees for So the seller pays their portion of the fees and the buyer pays their portion of the fees. It's the best way to go if you're in the Miami area here. Survey, if you're purchasing a house, you're going to need a survey no matter what. Condos, you don't need a survey. Home warranty, we typically don't do anything with home warranties, although you certainly can ask the seller to pay for it or you can pay for it. Special assessments, I always it's in the best interest of the buyer to put seller shall pay in full prior to or at the time of closing any assessments allowed by public body to be prepaid. Now, these are not special assessments regarding to condos. That's a separate addendum. This is if, like, let's say there's a house and they're redoing the sidewalk and they've levied a special assessment to pay for the sidewalk because you're the property that's next to it. They would have to pay that off in full prior to closing. So I always put seller shall pay in full. Bunch of disclosures here, bunch of fluff. All right, property inspection. Now, I typically see inspections done within 5 to 10 days. I have an inspection company that'll get out there the next day to do the inspection for us. So I feel very comfortable putting down 5 days. And the quicker you get your inspection done, the better it is for the seller. So it makes our offer stronger. Bunch of fluff, bunch of fluff, bunch of fluff. You can read this on your own time. I always send you a copy of this so you can study it yourself. I'm just going over the big things. All right, now we're arriving at the bottom here. Now, sometimes people want to write offers with appraisal contingencies, and sometimes they don't want to write offers with appraisal contingencies. On this example here, we did have an appraisal contingency. The market isn't super hot right now, so we can get away with it. But if the market's hot, you can't be competitive with an appraisal contingency sometimes. So F, I'll show you that addendum in a second. This is a separate attachment. Seller, and I always write this in additional terms here. Seller shall deliver property free and clear of any code and association violations and or open or expired permits. And I write that as an extra protection to you as the buyer because we don't want to assume any code violations, association violations, or open or expired permits. It's just a headache. So that's something I always additionally put in there. And ask a little bit about my information, the listing agent's information, and that's the end of the contract. Now, as you see, you're going to be signing this contract. You're going to be initialing every page. If you have any questions about this, obviously feel free to reach out. I know this was a kind of like a quick walkthrough. I just wanted to cover the main important pieces. And like I said, in further videos, I'm going to be going in depth more on specific things. Let's dive into this appraisal addendum here. So the appraisal contingency addendum looks like this, and it just states this contract is contingent upon buyer obtaining at buyer's expense a written appraisal from a licensed Florida appraiser on or before. So we put the date in here. Typically, we do it within 20 days of acceptance. At least 10 days prior to closing, that has to be done. And stating that the appraised value of the property is at least, if left blank, the purchase price. So I always leave it blank. So it's a purchase price. What this means, let's say we offer $650 on a property, but the appraisal comes back at $630. So a $20,000 difference. You as the buyer have to come up with that difference unless we have an appraisal contingency. If we have an appraisal contingency in there and it appraises low, we have the opportunity to negotiate with the seller and be like, hey, you got to come down to the appraised price, or maybe we could split it 50-50. If it's $20,000 low appraisal, I'll pay $10,000 above appraisal, and you come down $10,000 on your price. So the appraisal is one of the big factors within the contract and piece. It's a big piece to purchasing a property. So yeah, that's kind of an overview of the that's an overview of the contract here. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out.